Eagles offense couldn't move the ball, so they are moving coordinators. Kevin Patullo is out. Diana Rossini reporting that Mike McDaniel and Jalen Hurts' old Alabama OC, Brian Daboll, top the list. Here's how the Eagles regressed from their Super Bowl winning season. Down in points, down in yards, down in rushing yards. Punt percentage up. That's a bad one to be up in. And 3 and outs up. And then again, that is a bad one to be up in. Is changing the OC enough to fix the Eagles' offense?
I don't think so. I also find this to be the most fascinating job in sports.
It's all of sports.
But certainly in the NFL. Because here's the deal. And it has to do with how people evaluate Jalen Hurts and what it means for your future in the field. So the offensive coordinators they've had have either immediately become head coaches or immediately been fired.
Yeah.
And so it feels to me like when you're Jalen Hurts' offensive coordinator and the team's offense is unbelievable, people are like, oh, my God, you're working magic with Jalen Hurts.
But then, hold on. They do that with all coordinators whose offenses are great.
No, but the opposite, though, but then the opposite happens. Like, you think this is a knock. It's not really meant to be. So for Steichen and for Kellen Moore, it's like, my God. Like, you have limitations as a passer. You're scoring all these points. You're an offensive mastermind. But then when it doesn't work, people are like, man, you have all that talent on offense and a quarterback we all know is good. Why is it not working? You're fired. Like it feels like the court when it doesn't work, the how you feel about Jalen Hurts changes, and the coordinator either gets rewarded or pays the price for it. When they have an awesome offense, people are like, well, they have a superstar quarterback. When they have
I think you're saying the coordinator gets the credit or the blame. Because if the offense is great, the coordinator gets a head job.
Correct.
If it's bad, the coordinator gets fired.
Yes, I mean that's exactly which is it feels independent of the quarterback. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, maybe but I don't think it's making the point you're making. Like I think that means if they get a good offensive coordinator,
we're gonna point.
It's gonna be fixed. I mean, that's kind of what you're saying.
Well, I mean, I think that it's just interesting to me that it feels like when the offense is great, they're like, it can't be because of Jalen, so the coordinator gets a head coaching job. And when the offense is bad, they're like, well, it can't. The team then says, well, it can't be because of Jalen. We have to fire you. So it's two very different views. The outside world looks at a good Eagles offense and says, that guy must be a genius. Mm-hmm. The inside world looks at a bad Eagles offense and says, that guy must be an idiot. And so maybe that is what's happened, but it's weird to go fired, promoted for 4 straight offenses.
It's more than Jalen, though. They're looking at Saquon, A.J. Brown, Devontae Adams, and we can't, or Devontae Smith, and we can't score points, you know. So, look, I think that's obviously the first step. I think that'll be big. But Jalen does need to improve in the intermediate passing. There's no doubt. As his running ability diminishes, which it just naturally will as he gets older, he's going to have to become a better passer. He's obviously a good passer, but he's going to have to improve in that. I also think Saquon has had this pattern of having a tough season and then bouncing back. In 2021, I think he averaged like 3.7 yards a carry. The next year, he ran for a career high 1,300 yards, 1,312 yards. The next year, another 3-point-something yards per carry. The next year, 2,000 plus, you know. And then this year, he ended up getting over 4, but it was a down year. So I think he could have a bounce back year because I don't think all running backs certainly age like they did in yesteryear. So I think he can have a bounce back. And then offensive line, last year they had 4 guys make either the Pro Bowl or the All-Pro team. This year they had 2. So the offensive line, and we know Lane Johnson was out some too. They have to rebuild the line. Jalen does have to improve.
2 Pro Bowl offensive linemen's pretty good.
No, but it's not 4. It's not the 4 that they had.
I could get it.
No, but their offensive line has been a strength of their team, and it wasn't this year. It was fine, but it wasn't a strength of their team. So those are some of the things they need to really be focused on this offseason to get back to where they were.
Yeah, I think it matters who the offensive coordinator is, and it changes, and it's enough. Because that's what you're saying about Saquon has typically been the Eagles. They have a great season. Offensive court, Shane Steichen, they look great. Jalen looks great. Awesome. He's gone. The following year, you got Johnson, and it kind of falls apart. It's not terrible offensively, but it's like, you know what, he's not the guy. He didn't do what Shane Steichen did. Then the next year, Kellen Moore, obviously, you get Saquon. They are motivated again. They go through this. So now this year, it's like, man, these players didn't produce. For our coordinator, Kevin Patullo. So he's out. Now you got another season. You get an offensive coordinator. One of these, if Mike McDaniels get this job, you're going to be forced, if you're Jalen, to do things that you were saying, that we were hearing that you didn't really like. All the pre-snap motion, all those things. You're going to, because that's his style of offense. He's going to come into that building with an idea, a way of doing things, and try to marry it and blend it with what you already do. You have to be willing to compromise a bit there. But this will be a motivated team. However, regardless of how you feel about A.J. Brown and what you possibly can get, you would want to try to see what this looks like if you have an offensive coordinator that you definitely believe is going to change the landscape of how we move forward and what we look like moving forward.
I think they should look to trade AJ too. I just don't need the distraction. He's great, obviously.
And I just feel like part of the distraction is because of the stale offense and the lack of productivity from the quarterback because of the stale offense.
But Devontae Smith was going through the same stale offense. I'm sure he's just as frustrated as AJ. But he didn't go public.
When you're in locker rooms, you always have that guy who's going to speak how everybody feels. AJ is simply that guy.
But every team doesn't have that publicly.
I understand what you're saying.
That's all I'm saying.
I understand that. But sometimes when you're in that position with the Eagles and you're going to constantly be asked, and you are that guy, and your production is not there, you're going to end up giving in and saying something. That's just his personality. Devontae Smith, you see we showed it. All of this on the sideline, all he's doing is talking, man, this is crazy. What are we doing right now? Devontae Smith feels the same way.
But it's different when you go public.
I think
that's all I'm saying.
I think Greg's saying if AJ weren't there, someone else might have the responsibility to go public.
We have news on Sam Darnold. We'll figure out how big of a deal this is. Here he is at practice today. He's got a Theragun, but he's not touching his oblique, which
definitely
is
not
questionable for this game on Saturday. Greg, do you think this is a big deal or not a big deal?
Not a big deal. He's playing. Too big of a moment. He will play.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. What?
Well, is he going to be full Sam Darnold?
Well, I don't know, buddy, and I don't even know what full Sam Darnold means. But I'm telling you, I think he's playing.
He may have an excuse now if he struggles. The oblique.
The oblique is not an excuse. I don't think anyone's been.
The oblique's not an excuse. Brew did a whole full screen yesterday based on Lamar's toe and ankle.
Toe is a huge deal.
No, Lamar was missing practices.
Well, but that.
Josh, can you see if anyone missed any games with an oblique? You can pull an oblique.
Yeah, for sure people have missed games with an oblique, buddy.
Yeah. I'm just wondering who it is. And then I'll be able to
Josh, get on
it.
that, buddy.
What? What are you?
I'm not trying to downplay it, but he's going to play.
Guys, I'm taking the news seriously.
When Shador came off the good preseason game and then couldn't play the next week, you know why? An oblique.
Okay, well, that's something.
Yeah, what are we arguing about? What do you want?
I feel like you're dissing the muscle, to be honest with you. You're dissing the muscle.
I'm not dissing the muscle. I'm just saying it's the biggest game of the guy's career. Yes. They haven't played in 2 weeks. I'm watching him run, and he's deciding a different part of his body needs therapeutic action at the moment. I think he's going to play.
Let's just say this is on my radar.
Okay.
Big time.
Okay.
Big time. Rams-Bears Sunday night. Caleb Williams has been electric in the clutch. Started a little slowly. Does Caleb still have something to prove? Oh, this is Caleb this season. Quarters 1 through 3. Okay. But he really turns it on in the fourth quarter. 13 touchdowns, only 2 turnovers. Passer rating shoots up by about 14 points. Does he still have something to prove, bro?
Absolutely. I mean, that he can play on schedule, that he can improve his accuracy and make the layups, that he can play well in the first half and, up to 3/4. And I know he has at points during the season, but lately it's just been the dynamic comeback victories. And it's been a great run, 7 of those this year. That's incredible. But that is not going to continue. I don't think it continues this year. Mm-hmm. And it certainly won't just continue throughout his career. Even if he's a great clutch player, you're just not going to be able to dig yourself 20-point holes in a ton of games and always come back from them. So he just has to prove he also is not going to let his team get in that type of hole consistently. So, yeah, he's on a great path. He's looking fantastic, and he's certainly put last year's struggles behind him, but he still has a ton to prove.
So I would argue those are things that I believe he needs to improve, but to prove it in this game, no. You just have, if anything, a player's competitive drive, he's going to put pressure on himself to prove that I can win even in this moment, because the stage only gets brighter every step in the postseason that you take. And so he believes in himself. If you listen to Ben Johnson, Danny and I had the opportunity to interview Ben Johnson twice this year. That is not how he was sounding.
Right.
In regards to speaking about his quarterback at the beginning and midway through the season. Like, he always felt like, there's a lot that we're working on. We're still trying to get him to progress in certain areas. But he wasn't talking like this. This sounds like a coach that has gone through the process and will continue that as they go into the offseason, regardless of what happens, and trying to get his quarterback to develop even more better habits, those things that you mentioned. But right now, he's pumping all the confidence into his quarterback because he's seeing that my quarterback has a belief that is unmatched. Like, regardless of the moment, regardless of if he plays on schedule or not, if he gets that ball in his hand and he has a chance to drive his team down the score, to take the lead, or to win the game, we all have watched he can do it.
Yeah, and I think his last 3 games, we've had a little bit of everything. Packer game in the playoffs, just not good at all through 3 quarters, and then utterly sensational in the 4th quarter, and they won. Lions game week 18, not good at all through 3 quarters, utterly sensational in the 4th quarter, and they lost. And then the Niners game the week before, awesome all 4 quarters.
Yeah,
they moved it. You know what I mean? That was a game where from the opening drive, that game was tied at 7-14. He was great the whole game. So I don't think it's been impossible for him to be good. As you mentioned, there have been moments. He obviously has saved the best for last. But we did this topic for KW, really for me, because I wanted to do it for you. Because you are Caleb skeptical. Is that fair? Not a Caleb hater.
No, I don't even think that's fair. I think that when Danny came on your seat, he's like, yeah, he's a top 5 quarterback.
Hold on.
What did he say?
Danny's behalf, I'm not going to let you do that. He didn't say that. Said with a win, he could be. That's what he said. I
still rejected that. I just don't think he's in the top 5 discussion. I don't think he's in the top 5 discussion of it. I don't think he's that close to it. And the endings of the game have been sensational. It sounds strange, but a nice boring win would be great.
I agree with that, Wildes. I mean, just because he has been great. There's nothing to say about his comebacks, nothing negative. But that can't make you a top 5 quarterback.
No, I don't think anyone at this desk, and I even think if Danny was sitting here, he wouldn't. Nobody is arguing he's top 5 quarterback. And when you asked Danny to list the people he'd be in the room with, he listed 6, which would have put Caleb at 7 in a best case scenario situation. What I think that there is maybe Wildes isn't a Caleb skeptic. Maybe I've misread that. But for the Caleb skeptics out there, there's he can't keep getting away with this element. And I think for those of us that really believe in him, it is when you are seeing what the top end is, there is no reason to believe the easy stuff isn't going to get better.
Yeah, man.
And when that happens, he won't need to keep getting away with these crazy late game comebacks. And there is, to me, for a guy with that, and this is where I do care about pedigree. where I do care about the fact that you were a superstar player at every level, the #1 pick of the draft, and we have seen, okay, in the biggest spot of your career, you made arguably the single best throw anyone's made in the NFL this season. If my biggest concern at the beginning of the year was, are you going to take 60 sacks? My biggest concern in the middle of the year is, are you going to lead the league in delay of games? And now that those are both cleaned up, the concern is, are you going to keep one-hopping 7-yard hitch routes? I just think it's unfathomable that he's not going to clean that up and get better at that.
I'm with Nick. Look, when you've slain the giant, I'm going to call the Packers their giant, twice out of 3, with 3 opportunities, and the time you didn't, you felt like we had them.
I missed the throw.
Exactly. And you don't take that into a week like this and say, you know what, we already did the job. No, when you're a competitor with that type of motivation, with that type of confidence, you feel like, man, I already beat that team, already did what I need to do against them. How much more can I get out of myself? How much better can I get?
Harbaugh headed to New York. Yesterday, Nick had this as his 4th best job opening behind the Ravens, which would be shocking if Harbaugh got that job.
Yeah, would have been weird.
Steelers, which would have been slightly less shocking, but still shocking. And you had the Raiders at 3, who have the #1 pick and need a spot because that could be a combo. Then you had the Giants. So, Greg, do you think Harbaugh made the right call going to the Giants with all the openings?
I do. When you think about a coach, and I mentioned this yesterday, like coaches, as it pertains to what they value. Obviously, you go into a situation and you want to have a quarterback. If you don't have a quarterback, the next best thing of value is time. And so the alignment of Harbaugh and the Giants, you feel like he probably feels like this is an organization that will allow me to bring in my expertise, my vision, my strategy of how I want this team to look in terms of his identity and culture, and give me time to do that and produce that. That's what they're going to do. You believe you have something at quarterback. You don't know what you quite have, but you believe that there's something that you can work with there. And having the experience with a Lamar who, once you drafted Lamar, a lot of the critics were, he can't throw. Is he even a quarterback? And then to nurture that into what we now know as a 2-time MVP, pass-throwing Lamar Jackson, like that was a lot of Harbaugh's hand was in that.
Absolutely.
And so in just believing and pumping the confidence and belief in the fact and supporting the idea of, no, this is my quarterback. He's one of the best to ever do it. He's going to be one of the best to ever do it in the game. So I think he made the right decision based on young talent and the division being a division where you don't see too many times what we saw this year with the Philadelphia Eagles where a team wins it 2 years in a row.
Right.
This is something that can turn around right away. I really believe that.
Yeah, I said, Greg, earlier, I think they'll be in playoff contention next year. Whether they make it or not, they'll be in contention just next year based on Harbaugh and the talent they have. So, look, I think it's a great choice for the Giants, as I said. I think it's a good choice for Harbaugh. Like, I have no problem with him taking this. It's a very good franchise, the Giants. You know, historically, they've won Super Bowls. If you do something in New York, it is magnified. Eli Manning's 2 Super Bowls with the Giants are magnified over had he won those 2 with, you know, Jacksonville or whoever it might have been.
25 other teams.
Yeah. So there's that. Now, the only job I thought out there that was comparable that I thought maybe I thought he would take over Giants and he was going to interview for it was Atlanta. And I think the reason I felt Atlanta might be better, neither one you don't know in either situation if you have a quarterback. You think you might. I can feel just as good about Michael Penix as I feel about Jackson Dart. Now, Penix gets hurt a lot. Dart has the concussions. So he's a little older. But the quarterback situation is kind of whatever. Atlanta's not as good of a franchise, I don't believe, in terms of the ownership and everything. Doesn't have the history of the Giants. But they are in a the weaker division, at least for now. You know, it's a weaker division. And so I thought there were reasons to choose Atlanta over the Giants, but I have no problem with him going to New York.
Yeah, I think the Raiders' job the Ravens' job, as you said, I had number one.
Yeah.
You just left there. It didn't make sense for the Steelers to go from Tomlin to Harbaugh.
Yeah.
So to me, that was like crossed off.
Question.
So the only job that, in theory, I had him available for that was better than this one was the Raiders' job. But I don't know if that's a better job for John Harbaugh.
Yeah.
I like the upside of that job for a young offensive-minded head coach, because if you believe in Mendoza, you guys come together and grow together. And
in the great Ashton Genty.
I do like Ashton Genty a lot. I like Brock Bowers a lot. I think that team, needs about.
All right.
How many? You said the Eagles were down to 2 Pro Bowl offensive linemen. I think the Raiders would love to have 1 starting offensive lineman. But so that job to me is interesting. But this is a great fit for John Harbaugh. To your point about the franchise, I mean, maybe it means nothing, but it's an interesting fact. The only franchise in the NFL to win a Super Bowl each of the last 4 decades is the New York Giants. They won a Super Bowl in the 80s and the 90s and the aughts and the 10s.
Oh, we're down to the wire.
What do you mean?
We got a few more years.
We have half the decade left. And so I would imagine they're not going to win one in the 20s. But regardless, my point is they do have a storied history.
Yeah.
The fact that they're giving him 5 years, $100 million means he's got, in my opinion, a minimum of 4 years to show them I'm the guy. They're not going to have a quick trigger. I think the Falcons' job got worse by them firing Raheem this year. It's just like, damn.
I thought Raheem did.
You know what I mean? Like, again, I don't know that he did a great job or not, but to go to win 8 games and be fired in year 2, that feels, when your quarterback got hurt, that feels like, okay.
And to still have the team fighting the way they
Right. So it just felt like, okay, so it's kind of a quick trigger. The Raiders have had just a wildly quick trigger, you know what I mean, basically for every coach other than John Gruden over the last 30 years. So I think this is the right choice for the Giants. And for Harbaugh, I think it is, the division is, in my opinion, more open than people immediately think. Now, there's no team in the division that I'm certain is going to be bad. Because Washington's like, man, we just had a year from hell. Dallas is always going to try to be in it, and Philly's Philly. But I also feel like he goes there and he's like, hey, who's the only coach in this division that people talk about as might be a Hall of Famer? That's me. And now maybe Sirianni gets there one day, but also maybe there's also a scenario where Harbaugh-Tomlin rivalry gets reunited in the NFC East when Mike Tomlin a year from now is the coach of the Eagles.
Coach of the Eagles.
That's where my money. No, the coach of the Eagles a year from now. But so I think he's the best coach in the division, and I don't feel like there is a known quantity superstar quarterback in the division. And so for those reasons, I think this is a really interesting and intriguing job.
Do you put any credence at all, if I was another coach, like, this guy's the best coach in the division? Like, man, I would win a bunch of games with Lamar Jackson too. I got Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, and a great defense.
See, but he should get a lot of credit for developing Lamar Jackson in that process, because coming into the league, Lamar Jackson got passed on. They took him, and then it was like, well, a lot of teams pass on him because we don't know if he's really a quarterback.
Right.
A lot of us sitting at the desks were like, I don't know if he can throw. Yeah. Receivers don't want to go over there with Lamar. He just runs the ball all the time. And then the evolution of Lamar every single season. The Raiders was interesting that you even thought he would go there. I never really thought that was a real
possibility. Not really
like
for
a
him. Cultural fit.
But I just think it's a good
his brother's in the division.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
I never really.
He's a hard-nosed, like defense, kind of gritty type team. Like, up until these last couple years with Lamar, remember, they won a lot of games that were ugly, and Lamar's numbers weren't huge. It was like, that's the type, and the Giants have been that way. And that's when they've won. That's how they've been. Defense,
he didn't make a Super Bowl having Lamar. He did win a Super Bowl having Joe Flacco.
Yeah.
And so, that is the...
he had an all-time great defense, and then he had Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I mean...
I know we use Andy Reid as the example of, like, a coach that had a long, successful run and then moved, and Andy Reid got Patrick Mahomes. I'm interested to see Harbaugh without Lamar Jackson. I'm not willing to rubber stamp it maybe as
They made the playoffs with Lamar missing, 5 games with Tyler Huntley. Yeah. I'm just saying, like,
Pro Bowler.
And
He did make a Pro Bowl.
KW,
It's an offshoot of Brady Belichick. That's all it is.
No,
Yeah, but
I don't think it is because Belichick, again, I'm not
Developed
trying
Tom
to,
Brady, turned him.
No, but he had
No,
success.
but he didn't. Belichick did not have success before or after Brady. Harbaugh had success before Lamar.
It's just a tangent.
If I may though, I know I want to get to the next thing, but I think we're maybe looking at it differently. I don't think necessarily the goal of hiring a head coach is to find a top 3 head coach. I think it's to avoid a doofus. And I
For the Giants, I definitely
and
believe
I think that you guarantee
Yes.
this guy knows what he's doing. He brings credibility. He's not gonna
Stability,
right.
culture.
And so
How dare
when
you.
14
taking a shot at Joe Judge.
No, I'm just
you're
no,
a
but
guy, Joe
when
Judge.
After McAdoo
14
and Judge, and then obviously Dable.
I mean, 14 of the 32 teams have changed their coaches in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So I think this is smart. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get more from the show and to check out clips from other shows on FS1.